Thank you for joining us around the fire. For more information or to make a donation, please visit randomactsnetwork.com. Now, want to hear a scary story?
I was never one for ghost stories. Growing up in a coal town like ours, you hear your share of tall tales. The kind of stories that old-timers spin with tobacco-stained teeth, hoping to scare the greenhorns into respecting the mines. But when you're the son of a miner, all that's just background noise to the rumble of coal carts and the grind of pickaxes. The Tommyknockers, in particular, were the stuff of legend. But legends are just that. Stories. At least, that's what I used to think. Myself, I've been a miner for over 20 years. My father and his father before him all worked the veins of coal below. It's a hard, honest living, and it puts food on the table. But there's the dangers, too. Every miner knows that. My old man used to say, "It's not if the mine'll get you, but when." He died in a cave-in when I was just 16. They never found his body. All they recovered was his helmet, lying like a tombstone on the rubble. From that day on, it was my helmet. Of course, even if you didn't get buried, the mines will find a way to get you. There's the cold that seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. And the air so dusty, the pitman's plague is all but promised. Turns your lungs darker than dirt and steals the breath away from you, bit by bit, every day, until you have none left to take. But there's something about the mine that calls to you. It's in the blood, I guess. The mine becomes part of you, and you become part of it. The damp smell of the earth in those deep, dark tunnels reminds you where we all come from and what we all become again when our day is done. This story in particular happened on a Wednesday at the Maple Grove mines. A group of us, 12 or so, were finishing up the night shift just before dawn. Everyone just exhausted. Most of us, we kept our heads down and did our jobs, so I didn't think anything about how nobody was talking much. I was at my station when I started to hear it. At first, I thought it was just the creaking timbers or someone kicking a rock or something. A faint tapping sound, like someone knocking on a door far away. But the knocking continued, almost like a heartbeat. Rhythmic, growing louder, more insistent. No matter how I tried, I couldn't pinpoint from which direction it was coming from. I asked the man working next to me if he heard it too. His name was Hank. He muttered something about the mine playing tricks on us and shrugged it off. But I wasn't so sure. As the night wore on, the knocking continued to grow louder, to the point where other miners started to notice something too. More and more wide-open eyes glanced around nervously in the dim light of our lamps. I could feel that everyone was on edge, just waiting for something to happen. Of course, without having any real reason not to, we just had to keep working. But something was coming, that much was clear. A mine has a million ways to kill you, and none of them are pretty. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped, and the whole cave fell silent. One by one, the men stopped working, looking around at each other with big eyes. And that's when the walls closed in. It happened so fast, in less than a second, the ceiling was on us. Somebody screamed. It may have been me, I don't know. And the world went black. When I came to, everything was still. The first thing I noticed was the cold. All I could smell was the earth, so I thought I was dead and buried. Then my heart started beating in my eardrums and I remembered where I was. I tried to swallow and couldn't. My throat was as dry as the dirt around me and I could taste blood. I tried to move, but my legs were pinned under a pile of rubble. I was trapped. I figured I should save my energy, so I held still a minute before trying to take a look around from where I was. I didn't see much, since the air was so thick with dust, and the light on my lamp was dim and flickering. I strained to hear any sounds at all, other movement, voices, even that curious knocking. Anything to tell me I wasn't alone. I tried to call out, but my voice was too weak. I couldn't get a deep enough breath to make a sound in the least. So I just started to think about how those were probably going to be my final moments, and I found myself jealous of the other men who must have died right away when the tunnels went in. I began to feel sleepy, and the throbbing in my head had calmed a bit. The thought of closing my eyes and drifting off for good didn't sound so bad. But then, I heard it again. At first it was so quiet I told myself that it was in my head. Then I knew, as the knocking got a little bit louder, that it was real, and it was coming from somewhere below me, far beneath the bowels of the earth. But I was stationed just off the shaft bottom. That's the lowest level in the mines, so there couldn't possibly be anyone below me. The sounds gave me a taste of hope, though, and that was enough for me. I was able to free one of my legs from the rubble, and then the other one, too. God damn it hurt like hell when I stood up. But I gritted my teeth and forced myself to limp ahead in the tunnel, over the jagged debris and twisted beams sticking out like broken bones. I thought for a second that I probably had a few of those myself, and I wasn't sure if I should keep moving and risk making anything worse. And I wondered about if there was a rescue team coming for us. Maybe it would be better to stay put, where they'd think to look for me. But the knocking continued, calling to me, urging me to follow. And in front of me, there was a gap in the rubble just big enough to squeeze through. I crawled through the gap, every movement sending pain through my battered body. On the other side, the tunnel sloped forward, and I could see my breath in the dim light of my headlamp. Which way was north or south or up or down, I couldn't have told you. I didn't know what to do other than keep on following that sound. Knock, knock, knock. I'm not sure how far I went or for how long. Finally, the tunnel opened up into a cave. My headlamp barely made a dent in the darkness, but when I came to a stop, I was certain I saw movement in the shadows. Knock, knock, knock. My first thought was that I'd come upon a nest of snakes, but as the knocking grew louder, I felt no choice but to follow. Deeper and deeper, darker and darker, and finally the shapes in the darkness came into view. Bent and twisted figures, with eyes glowing like dying embers. Their limbs were knotted together, like it shouldn't have been possible, and their faces, God, their faces. I knew it in my bones. These were the Tommyknockers. Knock, knock, knock. Now I saw the chorus of fists pounding on the walls of the caverns, creating the never-ending knocking that echoed through the chambers. I was filled with terror. I wanted to go back, but I couldn't walk, let alone run. And there wasn't anything for me to head back toward anyway. So I just froze there, stuck to the spot like I was sprouting roots, as the Tommyknockers knock, knock, knocked. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged. As it grew closer and closer, I could finally make out its face. His face. My father's. But his features were exaggerated and angular, and his skin gray and translucent. His crusty lips parted, and he opened his jaw, further and further, impossibly down, down until his mouth was so ungodly wide his chin could rest on his stomach. And from his throat he released the most terrible, horrible, shrieking cry that slowly morphed into the sounds of my own name. He raised both arms in the air, and I was pulled forward by something I couldn't see, closer and closer to his gnarled fingers and his awful screaming face. The others closed in too, dragging their crooked feet forward until they swallowed me whole and buried me alive beneath their bodies. They found me the next morning, collapsed by a small entrance to the cave that was way on the other side of the mound that nobody had seemed to know was there before that. I was the first one they'd found, they said. I was lucky to be alive. But it had nothing to do with luck. I was alive because of the Tommyknockers, the spirits of the miners trapped below, that guided me to safety and shielded me from the debris. I can't say for sure if it was really my father down there, but I can say that the blow to my head would have killed me, if not for his helmet. Nobody accused me of lying, right out, about what I saw, but the authorities and the doctors, even my wife, they all said the same. Taking a blow like that to the head could have anyone seeing things that weren't there. The other men were never found. Not alive, not dead, nothing. And eventually they couldn't justify looking anymore, so they just sealed the whole cave off. Said it was too dangerous to keep open. But I knew what happened to them. My father and the men I had worked with. They're Tommyknockers now. And I can still hear the knocking sometimes. Late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear it down below like a heartbeat. Knock, knock, knock. And one day, I won't be able to resist. There's just something about a mind that calls to you. After all, it's in the blood.